Friends of the Planet, Miro here. Today, we're so excited to have Carlos Manuel Rodriguez, who is the new-ish CEO of the Global Environment Facility. And Carlos, thank you so much for taking the time with us this afternoon to chat.
Well, it's my real pleasure. Very happy to join you all today.
And so I wanted to ask, you started this role in the midst of a pandemic. And as we emerge, I wanted to ask how you are going to emerge in this role. If you could tell us a little bit more about yourself, just, to introduce our audience and, perhaps where your love of the ocean and conservation comes from.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. So I'm the newest CEO from the Global Environmental Facility, which is the largest financial mechanism for nature and environmental conservation in the planet. I was appointed last year when we were all looking at the first cases of COVID-19 around May. I never thought that we were going to go through what we went through. It hasn't been easy. And let me share just a small anecdote. Like 5 years ago, I went to Liberia in West Africa, in Monrovia, and they were amidst a pandemic, very heavy pandemic 1 year. And I got there 3 months after they were able to overcome the pandemic, the Ebola pandemic. And they told me that they spent 1 year without classes, children without schools, without going to the football games, with transportation restrictions. And I was unable to understand how come that country was able to deal with that pandemic. And I never, ever thought in my life that I will see the same thing at the global level. We need to change this functional relationship with nature. So this is my job. My job is to help people, society, so to understand that there are better ways by which we can come together within human system and natural systems. So in that context, it hasn't been easy. I'm supposed to be working from Washington, D.C., probably very near from where you all live.
Yeah.
But I'm still down here in Costa Rica, and I call it my Costa Rican bubble. We've been impacted, of course, by the pandemic, but not like many other countries. Our social care system is very good. So we still have a livable situation, but it hasn't been easy to begin these new tasks and responsibilities from afar, from abroad, but I receive a lot of support. So the induction process has been a bit longer, but I'm very enthusiastic by the opportunity of being the first CEO that comes from a developing country, which is another element which I want to share today. Normally, the CEO comes from an industrialized country, from a donor nation, and this adds extra responsibilities to me. Most probably, the previous CEO has defined their journey in a very ambitious context and use the North Star as their guidance. I don't use the North Star, I use the Southern Cross to guide me in my journey, and I hope it is very positive and productive.
I'm sure it will be, and we're very excited to welcome you to Washington whenever you can get here. You personally have been so much a part of the conservation efforts there. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the big new announcement that you at the Global Environmental Facility have been a part of. It's called the Blue Nature Alliance, and it's this unprecedented partnership between government and local communities and indigenous peoples, and I think there's so much good that could come from this. Tell us about the role of the Global Environment Facility in both bringing it together and then what you hope to accomplish with it going forward.
This alliance is the product of five strategic partners: Conservation International, the Pew Trust, the GF, the Minderu Foundation, and the Walton Foundation. We have heard many times through many different scientific reports how serious is the situation. And unfortunately, we haven't seen a political response. And within the climate convention, we got very good examples of those big gaps within, the scientific community and the political leadership. For the first time, we see a very strong alignment within both of them. And these are unique conditions to come together under the aspiration of achieving a lot of progress in terms of marine conservation. There is political appetite to protect 30% of the global ocean by 2030. And the Blue Nature Alliance is a catalyzer that can help large-scale ocean ocean conservation and support the growing interest of countries to go beyond their traditional terrestrial approach and be able to achieve this global objective of protecting 30% of the oceans. This is within the jurisdictional waters of the countries, and the next step will be, going all the way to the high seas, where we got a lot of open possibilities to increase sustainable management of those resources up there.
This year, all eyes are going to be on the climate COP in Glasgow. Here in the United States, President Biden is putting together a summit of leaders to talk about climate issues. And I wanted to ask how the Blue Nature Alliance's work might fit into the goals of achieving the Paris Climate Agreement.
We cannot achieve the climate target of 1.5% if we don't protect at least 30% of the planet. Mm-hmm. And on the other way around, we'll never be able to protect 30% of the planet if we don't achieve the climate target of 1.5%. So they intertwine very much. We've been developing this concept called nature-based solutions, which is using nature as a cost-effective manner to deal with climate mitigation and climate adaptation is a right way to solve with the climate solution. 30% of the climate solutions are based in using and giving a hand to nature. And this is where this alliance fits perfectly in that context. For many countries, the most important element is climate adaptation. By protecting 30% of the planet, we will be more resilient to those extreme weather events, being, rains or droughts. And in this respect, the alliance is working in the center of what we aim in terms of the Paris Agreement and what we need to do with respect to nature-based solutions.
Adaptation is such a big part of the climate equation, and it gets sometimes lost in all the mitigation and the technology and those solutions that are traditionally thought of, when actually adaptation is so important. And the ocean can play such an important role in mitigation and adaptation. How have you learned about this firsthand? You were the environment minister of your country, and during that time, lots of important marine protected areas were created around the world and in Costa Rica. So tell us about what you learned about the importance of ocean conservation and marine protection, marine protected areas, parks in the ocean from your time in government.
Let me first say that I saw the impacts of climate change firsthand in my relationship with the ocean, because I'm a surfer. I've been surfing the waves of the ocean for 40 years. It's not a sport. Surfing is a lifestyle. Being able to go to the same beaches and same surf break for 40 years has shown me how things have changed. The waves, the form of the waves has changed. The level of the high tide versus the low tide has gone to extreme, and we have felt it. We surfers are looking at the impacts of climate change. This is real and it's generating a big impact. So that really struck me before the climate change becomes something sensitive to the public opinion probably 15 years ago. Also, the fact that we began seeing animals that were not typical to that altitude or ecosystem. A small country like Costa Rica, where you go from 0 meters all the way to 4,000 meters, you got many different ecosystems, very well defined by ecological niches, where plants and animals really are adapted to that very specific ecological niche. When climate change began changing temperatures, we began seeing ants in places that there hasn't been an ant in history. We began to see birds in places that we never saw birds. When you got an ant, you may ask yourself, what is the impact of an ant? Well, the impact of an ant is dramatic in an ecosystem that is not prepared, didn't evolve with ants. Ants are very aggressive insects, and they can change the ecologic dynamic of an ecosystem. So those were the small changes that we saw in Costa Rica while we were in a desperate need to restore forests in Costa Rica, because my father generation never had the opportunity to understand that we can thrive with nature, and nature can be a strong supporter in terms of human development. So we were in a desperate need to restore degraded landscape, to stop deforestation. We were able to learn that that is possible. In Costa Rica, we doubled the size of our forests in the same time that our economy tripled. We need to bring that very positive experience into the ocean. On the land, we got this kind of social pact, where we humans agree to define the areas where we should produce our food, produce our energy, where we should live, where we need to protect nature. And we have accepted some very strict rules, like not using wildlife as a source of protein. We have domestic animals and we supply our protein through domestic animals. But in the ocean, we still behave like hunters and gatherers, like we used to live in the land 10, 20,000 years ago. We need to generate a social contract on how we should manage our oceans. I strongly believe that the Blue Nature Alliance is an excellent venue, an excellent opportunity for us not just to protect, to restore, and to increase the management of the efficiency in the management of marine protected areas. But most importantly, we need to go beyond that. We need to work in marine spatial planning, in generating that social contract within all stakeholders, because we got a lot of conflicts of visions within the stakeholders in the oceans. The fishing sector tends to believe that they are the only actors in the ocean. We got many others. So being able to translate that positive experiences in land conservation and sustainability into the ocean is a high priority for all of us.
Absolutely. And, I had read in a recent interview of yours where you said that you don't have to be a biologist to save the planet. I know that you identify as a lawyer, a politician, a conservationist, but can you give some advice to our readers and our listeners about, what everyone can do to save the planet in their own capacity?
I call myself a tropical environmental lawyer.
An emerging field of law.
Yes, and I grew up surrounded by ecologists and foresters and biologists, and I was, kind of the black sheep in the group because I was a lawyer. And even though I was a little bit confused in terms of my professional aspiration, I was very clear. I had to work in protecting nature and restore nature. I grew up in a country that was destroying the forest, and that has a huge impact in me. And I thought that, I got this political interest, and I began to understand that as a lawyer, I can be able to change the system within the system. I got it. The law, being a lawyer, helped me really jump into politics and began doing my work from the inside, as my friends, scientists and conservationists, were doing their work from the outside. The best lesson was given by my sons. I got 2 boys and 2 girls, and I always expected them to be, ecologists and scientists and biologists, because this is cool. This is great, as opposed to being a lawyer like myself. But to my surprise, as my kids were finishing high school and began going to college, none of them decided to study biology or ecology, and I was kind of sad and upset. They study, business administration, sociology, but you know what? They are all working in nature conservation. So they gave me a big lesson to me by letting me understand that whatever you may prepare yourself academically speaking, you got a responsibility to deal with these big challenges that we got at the global level. And the young generation, my kids' generation, feel that my generation compromised their future, so they need to take actions. And I'm really for, opening the political space for them to fill it up and be able to provide solutions that probably my generation was unable to provide with.
I can definitely relate. I think we're in that same generation together, and I think those young people are lifting us up, and it's really inspiring to us, at least to me. I'm sure to you. An easy one here at the end. Want to ask you, what's your wish for Earth Day? You're sitting at the Global Environment Facility. You have so much ability to affect change. What's your wish? What would you like to see a year from now or 10 years from now on Earth Day?
What I would like to see is that we can all really change our mindset and go from being on constant negotiation mode. We've been negotiating all the international environmental agreements for 20 years. I'm fed up with negotiations. We need to concentrate on what is really important, which is implementation, action. So I wish this year, we can finalize the formal negotiations so we can all concentrate in implementing actions that can really help us do the system change, and we can be on track with the many global environmental goals and targets. And I'm very optimistic that we're very close into that, and the role that the GF will play in that context is going to be instrumental.
I agree. And it is time for action. We've waited too long and we don't really have time to wait any longer. So you and I are going to have to help push this next generation forward and give them all the tools that we can to help them succeed. We wish you the best of luck in this role, and we look forward to talking with you again. And thank you for everything you do.
Well, thank you so much, and thanks for your interest in the work that we do with the Blue Nature Alliance. I'm really, really excited, and the response that we receive from countries on a regional base is outstanding, very encouraging. Thank you.